Hey guys, welcome back. Last week we talked about King David and all the aspects of his character that made him a powerful and influential leader. But this week we're going to look at his big defining screw up that he had. So we know that no one besides Jesus was perfect, but how did this great king screw up? And before we hop into the story in the Bible, I want to have a recap of where we are. David has become king. King Saul is dead. He's taken over and he's been victorious over and over again in wars because he's been following God's command, right? He's been listening to what he's told to do. He's trusting in God, and therefore he's succeeding. So at this point, he really is at the top of the world, right? He is probably the most powerful person in the world at that point. So we're going to jump into 2 Samuel, and we're going to read all of chapter 11. It's a big chunk. It is 27 verses, so it's going to take a second, but we're going to jump right in. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came up to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from the monthly uncleanliness. And then she was sent back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." So David sent this word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the palace with all of his master's servants, and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home, so he asked Uriah, "Haven't you just come home from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and the Lord's men are camped in an open country. How could I go home to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on the mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So Joab had the city under siege. He put Uriah in a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbesheth? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall?' If he asks you this, then say to him, 'Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.'" The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab, 'Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it.' Say this to encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. So, what David did was not a whoopsie. It was not SpaghettiOs. This was huge. David slept with a guy's wife, got her pregnant, and then he sent him out and specifically had him killed. This is a major, major, major bad decision. At this point in time, David had all of this power and was beginning to feel like he deserved everything that was given to him. And he was willing to do evil things to get his way. So in my Bible here, it has 5 common abuses of power. So the first one, and these all still happen today, is drifting away from the disciplines we still demand of our people. So it says that the kings went to war and David decided to stay home instead of going with his people. Second one is believing that others owe us whatever we can make of them. So he saw a woman bathing. He said, okay, this is my kingdom. She's mine. Third one is attempting to fix things up rather than make things right. So instead of saying, oh, I did something that was wrong, he instead just tries to get rid of Uriah, right? Number 4 is refusing to accept that we could be blindly out of God's will. So he's listening to this guy who says, hey, all of the other people in this country are off fighting this war. How can I be home and celebrate? That doesn't make sense. And he just ignores it, right? And number 5 is believing that people in our wakes are expendable. So David said, well, I don't see another way to deal with this. I'm not going to admit my mistake. I'm just going to kill this guy, right? So he is less important than my mistake is. And he's getting in the way of what I want. So I'm going to get rid of him. David abused the power that he had in a big way. And he hurt other people in the process in a big way. And God was not happy. So we're not going to focus on the punishment that God gave to David, but the mistake that David made. So obviously, murder and adultery are absolutely horrible sins. But we're looking at leadership in these lessons. So we want to look to before that, before he actually committed those crimes, what mistake did he make? By believing that he was owed everything in his kingdom, David stopped rising to meet the challenges that faced him. In another word, he stopped growing. And since he stopped growing, he stopped leading. So we can learn 2 major things from this decision, right? And even the aftermath of this decision. The first one is, in order to be good leaders, we have to keep getting better. Because only by growing can we continue to grow the people that we're leading, right? So if we are not continually growing ourselves, we can't expect the people that we're leading to also continually grow, right? You can't ask someone to do something that you are not willing to do. And number 2 is people will remember the good that you've done more than the bad that you've done. So David had a major screw up here. He killed a guy and he slept with a married woman and he did all of this against God's will. He made a bunch of just bad decision after bad decision, right? But still, when you mention David, people don't think of that first. The first thing they think of is his greatest triumph, which was beating Goliath, right? So know that you guys are not going to make mistakes that are as big as this. But you are going to make mistakes. So when you mess up, it's important to do 3 things in this order. First thing, you acknowledge that you made a mistake, right? I screwed up. I'm sorry. Number 2, learn from your mistake, right? You can't acknowledge that you made a mistake and then continue making that same mistake. And number 3 is move on. Because if you sit there and you dwell on that mistake, it's not going to do anything but bring you down. It's not going to help the people following you. So acknowledge your mistake. Usually that means apologizing too. Learn from the mistake. Don't dwell, just move on, right? So remembering those 2 aspects, that people are going to forget what you did bad, and we need to keep growing. Those are huge things that we can learn from David's biggest mistake in his life, right? And as we said before, it's important to be wise and learn from those mistakes instead of having to make mistakes on our own. So I want to just urge you guys to continue to be good leaders. I'm going to post some discussion questions in the comments here. I'm also going to post some contact information. By next week, we should have a couple different social media platforms up and running. Just a couple reminders. I may start doing our discussion questions in that format. But I am so excited to see you guys on Wednesday night for youth group. If you are new and you want to join our youth group, I will leave some contact information in the description of the video. Please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. And for those of you that are in the youth group, I will see you guys on Wednesday.